Hey guys, welcome to the Student Side Hustle. So in this show, what we're trying to do is I'm trying to share stories of individuals and people who generally are doing something unique, doing something entrepreneurial, doing something that they're passionate about and trying to make it their career. That's not necessarily the thing that allows you to be on the show or qualifies you to be a guest on the show, but that's generally what we're talking about. We're talking about entrepreneurship, passion, etc. A lot of it revolves around bodybuilding and fitness because that's what I'm personally interested in. But what I want you to take away from this is just the fact that you can do whichever passion that you'd like to do, and you can make that into a career. It's a long path, but you can make it happen. And basically what I'm doing is showing you 80 plus examples of people who are doing it and who have done it. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I would love if you would subscribe because we've got a lot of new episodes coming out. And yeah, thank you so much for listening.
You know, people are constantly raising the bar.
Sacrifices need to be made.
What would you guys say are your biggest weaknesses?
You or your enemy right now?
It's success of life.
Just a fucking podcast.
Hey guys, welcome to the Student Side Hustle. This week I'm speaking to Gabrielle Fundaro. Gabrielle Fundaro, or known as Vitamin PhD on Instagram. She has a PhD in Human Nutrition, Foods and Exercise at Virginia Tech. She is also a Renaissance periodization coach, and she is on the panel of Stronger Experts. So, Gabrielle, how did you get into this? How did this whole thing all start?
Oh my gosh, this whole thing of becoming an RP coach starts back when I was in grad school. It was sort of a happy accident that my initial dissertation project was going to be on muscle wasting during high-fat feeding, otherwise known as cachexia. And, I had some undergraduate helpers in the lab and whatnot, and they bungled the samples that we had so severely that I had to can the whole project. And my side project, which was on the potential protective effects of probiotics during high-fat feeding, that then became my main project. And it was because I was just very curious, and we were not actually, a microbiome lab. The lab was actually skeletal muscle physiology and biochemistry. But as part of the model of obesity and high-fat diet-related type 2 diabetes, we would take these mice that had their immune systems modulated in some cases. We would inject them with something called lipopolysaccharide, or LPS, and then we could measure the metabolic dysregulation that occurred. And I was curious as to why we were injecting them with LPS. And it turns out that LPS comes from certain bacteria that are in the gut. It actually can escape the gut and enter circulation and bind to specific receptors that can cause inflammation. And so I thought, well, it's certainly important to figure out what's happening there mechanistically in skeletal muscle, but I really wanted to know, how can we get to the root of the problem if LPS is a problem? And so that's how I was lucky enough to, get hooked up with the probiotics research. And so that was really emerging. I mean, it was a new area for our lab. And a lot of what I did, it was, looking into the research at what other people were doing, trial and error, kind of figuring things out as I went, and using tissues that we really hadn't used in the lab before. So it was a really interesting experience. But from there, I really didn't do much with it. I wanted to teach, and I ended up doing a 2-year fellowship in pedagogy, which is basically the science of teaching and learning, and stayed on longer than I really had to after that research was done so I could learn how to teach because I wanted to be a professor. So I was offered a position actually before I defended my dissertation, which was really incredible. So I successfully defended, found a place to live, moved out of state, started my job all within 3 months. And so I taught at a college here north of Atlanta in Georgia for about 4 years. And in the last couple years that I was teaching there, I started to form a little bit of an online presence. I mean, I had a blog and I posted on Facebook and was really active on the Facebook page of the International Society of Sport Nutrition, I was studying for their certification exam. And as it happened, Dr. Mike Israetel, sorry, Mike, here, I can't say your last name. He saw my content and how I was communicating with people, and he reached out to me about becoming an RP coach. And I jumped at the opportunity. It was funny because I had actually seen RP, online and things like that before that. And I remember I had told one of my colleagues, like, man, I really wish that I could really coach. Like, imagine just traveling the world and like being a coach, where people really care about sport nutrition, because I was teaching sport nutrition. I was really passionate about it, but a lot of the students were not necessarily going in that direction. And so I felt that, my area of expertise and my passion and my skills weren't really being utilized the best where I was. So after a year of coaching and teaching, teaching as I possibly could, with full-time job and studying for this exam and whatnot, I actually, I was very frugal, squirreled away all my money, and I came to a point where I was in a good position that I could actually resign and go into coaching full-time. And was also able to then start taking classes for the dietetics program. It's a little bit different when you have a PhD in the States. You can do something called an ISPP, which is sort of an accelerated individualized pathway to get you all the courses that you need, nothing that you don't need at this point in your life, and then do your internship. So that's underway now, and I've been coaching full-time since June. So it's been, time has really flown. And I've already had my first international seminar. I just presented in Tel Aviv at the end of January. And I have more international travel coming up this year. And yeah, it's just been crazy. I mean, really, I never thought that, this would be my life. It was always just a pipe dream. And it was just that, the opportunities presented themselves and I was prepared to take them. And it's just been incredible since then. I mean, I feel like I'm finally now reaching my potential. I'm doing all the things that I find to be incredibly fulfilling, educating myself, putting out content and reaching out to people and reaching people who really care and are so invested and so engaged. I mean, there's really nothing that compares to the kind of connection that you can make with people when you're, exchanging ideas and information and they're excited about something that you're excited about. So it's just really incredible.
Yeah, I agree. It's something that's really insane because especially in this community, there's so much just critical thinking. I think it's like that's something that's so nice. It's like everyone, for the most part, thinks pretty critically and thinks logically instead of with emotions or with no rationale. And I think it's absolutely fantastic. How did you know, or how did you sort of make that jump? Was it just sort of a given? Did you sort of say, okay, what's the other option? Stay in the job and then not do that? Or it's just sort of like, fuck it, do it, take the risk.
It was a really difficult decision because I decided that I wanted to be a professor when I was still an undergrad. I was 20 years old. I was taking anatomy and physiology. I loved that course, and I ended up tutoring my classmates most days of the week for hours for free. I mean, It was just something that I loved to do. And I was like, I need to get my PhD because I want to teach college level courses. So I've got to, I never really struggled too much academically, but I was working like 30 hours a week at that point. I was like an assistant manager at a sporting goods store, and I was like, I've got to get all A's. I've got to get into an internship in a research lab, and that was a headache because the faculty really they wanted the students to go into like gym settings and whatnot. So I had to jump through extra hoops to be approved to go into a research lab. And then, I did my internship, and then I worked there for a semester as a research assistant before I ended up applying for the actual doctoral program. And then that was 5 years. And so it was, 5 years of PhD program, and then all of the craziness of like moving out of state just for this job. This was the opportunity that I had to have a professorship. I mean, it's really rare to come out without doing a postdoc and land a teaching position.
Right. Yes.
And I had invested so much time and energy. I mean, I was involved in curriculum design and across the department, and then also across like the whole college. And I was an advisor for the Honor Society. I mean, I was really, really involved on campus, and I am still extremely passionate about educating. So really, I've blogged about this a few times about my decision to leave. I read a book called The Dip by Seth Godin. Yes. And I looked around and thought, am I in a dip right now? Like, is it just that this feels hard, working on campus, and it feels hard, but like I'm developing and I'm progressing. And I realized that no, in fact, I was not, this wasn't like a dip in my career that was going to lead to my development and bloom into something new. I really felt that at that point I was actually kind of wilting a little bit. I didn't have a lot of opportunities to grow and learn. And I months and months later, after I resigned, I started keeping a planner, and part of the planner was making a vision board. Yep. And so I started jotting down just words that came to mind about what do I value in life? How do I know that I am a successful person? And big ones that came up were about impact and reach and change in the industry. That even if I am, a small voice, I kind of want to be a loud voice of reason. Yeah. And I couldn't really do that if I was sort of siloed in academia. And especially, it's unfortunate, I think, because a degree now, a bachelor's degree, really has become commodified. And students aren't always interested in getting a degree because they want to learn. They just want to get their letter grade and move on. Yes. And so it put in a lot of time and effort and try to make things applicable to students and their lives, and bring in research and really try to equip them with skills to evaluate and to learn how to learn. And something that I was so passionate about, and I would get evaluations back like, I don't want to hear about protein shakes. Well, gosh, I'm really sorry to disappoint you. This is a sport nutrition course, nutrition and health and exercise. That's part of it. It's relevant, and so it just became a point where I just thought, I don't see myself working with that level of, or lack of receptivity. I want to make connections with people. And where I really felt connected to people was when I would go out. I didn't do a lot of seminars before RP, but I did a couple seminars, and people were so engaged. Yes, 100%. I kind of knew ahead of time. I knew about a year before I resigned, honestly, that I was not happy there. And then the semester that I was going to resign, I looked at my finances. That was a big thing because, and I stressed this, that you have to make sure that all of your ducks are in a row. Yes. And that you have enough probably even more than this, but I had enough for 6 months that I could support myself very comfortably if the shit really hit the fan. Yes, yes. And I made sure, I talked to Mike about it, and I talked to my family, and so it was something that I thought about for months and months and months, and I planned for, and did, and even, kind of projected like, okay, how many clients will I need to take on, and, things like paying your own taxes, paying for health insurance. There were so many things that I had to consider, but, at the end of the day, I thought the kind of stress that I will have there is going to be more positive than the stress that I have now. Like the stress of growth, the stress that we need to induce on our bodies to cause hypertrophy, that is a much more positive type of stress than the stress that we have from like illness and disease and being suffocated, And so that's really how I viewed it, was if I'm going to have stress, if I'm going to be putting in long hours, I want to be towards something that I feel like I'm creating. Yes, yes. And do you feel like the impact you could have was much different? Because I remember even the few seminars that I've attended, like I went to, I'm not sure I really agree with this coach's methods anymore, so I won't say the name, but I went to someone's coaching, well, not coaching, I went to their seminar. It was very, very good. I was interested the whole time,
I think a decent amount of it was BS, but it's fine. And then like the other day I went to Jordan Peterson's talk, and it's like the way everyone there, they had paid to be there. They wanted to be there to listen to him speak. The amount of attention everyone paid every single word that he said. It's like, you compare that to a classroom of any level. It's like, yeah. Like even you compare it to my university lectures. It's like people choose to be here, they pay money, but they can't focus. They don't want to focus.
Yeah, it's that was actually one of the straws that broke the camel's back was a seminar that I provided, and the turnout was far more than I expected. People were incredibly engaged. Not that, the money is what it is. Like in some cases, like when you travel and things like that, you really don't make a lot of money to do those seminars because you got all these other expenses and things like that. So it's not like, we're millionaires and whatnot, but it's nice in some cases for, the amount of time and effort that you're putting in to have that. And compared to an assistant professor salary, it was very different. And so, between that, the engagement and all of this and like how much I enjoyed it. And I put in so much time and effort to prepare for every lecture, every seminar. But it's like that got such a great response. And then I go back on campus and like nobody really cares,
Yeah, I can see how that's extremely demoralizing because it's like, okay, this is the most passionate thing. And then it's like, there's nothing you can do to make the kids give a fuck. And it's unfortunate, but it's like, it is what it is.
Yeah. And it was kind of like, for a long time, I thought it was me. I thought I am a bad teacher.
Yeah,
There's something
that's the
that I'm doing wrong. Yeah. And then I realized, you know what? This is the same content. I deliver it in the same way. And the only difference here is that like out in the real world, I'm Dr. Fundaro, vitamin PhD. And then in here in the classroom, like there are definitely students who are really appreciative and really engaged. But just the fact that like as a whole, you get these evaluations and you get feedback from the students and you can just kind of tell that people have checked out or, they're kind of rude to you. And it's like, what happens when we go through these walls that the things just break down,
It's because I don't know what changes, but the moment someone is mandated to learn it, the whole thing changes. Like for instance, in high school, I read To Kill a Mockingbird, I think it was, and I hated it. And it's like now I love reading with all my heart. And it's like I can read a book like that now, and it's like wow, fascinating. But like if you tried to force me to do that, I wouldn't do it. And it's just something about that. Do you know what do you think makes the difference? Why do you think the seminars had such a good reception when the university seemed to be like some of the kids just didn't give a fuck no matter what you did?
I definitely think it was a difference in intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation it's only effective like in the very short term. And in most cases, the kids are they're not in college because they enjoy learning. Some of them are, but the ones who don't intrinsically, they're not there because they enjoy learning or they're not there because they identify as like, this is, I like learning and I'm a student of life and, continuing education. And, I want to do this because it's good for me as just an individual to, challenge my beliefs and learn new things and grow intellectually. They're there in many cases because I have to go to college because I have to have a bachelor's. My parents are telling me that I have to do this. I don't even really know what I want to do yet, so I'm not passionate about anything, so I'm not intrinsically motivated. I don't identify as I'm going to be X when I grow up. So that's a big thing that I saw, a big difference, a rift between the students who just checked out and didn't want to be there versus the ones who were engaged. They really just loved learning. I mean, it's like they enjoyed every class, because it was just, I'm learning. It would like maybe be 2 classes that they weren't super passionate about, but they still identified as, I am a student and I'm studious and, I need to do the things to excel. It's sort of like, I feel like I'm intrinsically motivated to, go to the gym. Like I identify as a power lifter. Like no one has to tell me to go to the gym. I go because I enjoy it. But not everybody's like that. And I think that that's very important still to be able to reach all of those people. And I did, I tried for a long time, and it just came to, a point where it was like, I didn't feel that I could reach as many people in that situation as I could in the seminars where, everyone wants to learn. And even if people, challenge what I have to say and things like that, that's fine. Like, I wish that my students, even if they, didn't agree with what I said, like, challenge me, have a discussion.
100%.
Don't just check out.
Yeah, that's something that, like, in my classes, for instance, I study podiatry. And it's like, I wish I'd picked a different degree at this point, but it's like, now I'm just doing the best with what I've got. And it's like, whenever there's anything related to bodybuilding, hypertrophy, anything like that, I jump straight onto it. And it's like, for instance, one time they said, steroids cause something or other. And I was like, okay, you can't just say that. Which steroids are you talking about? Like, you cannot just blanket statement say that. So I pretty much challenged them. And it was fascinating. And they enjoyed it too. And it was like, obviously it's not relevant to podiatry. But it's just like, I want to know. And I would ask the most random fucking questions. But it's because I just wanted to know them. But it's like, no one else asked fucking questions in the class. Like, the amount of questions that get asked, it's like, I'd say 80% of them are from me about bodybuilding. Like, God. Fuck, it's like, and it's a class of 30. We're all intimate. We all know each other. It's like, we're all friends. No one really feels that much judgment. But no one asks questions because they obviously don't give a fuck. So it's like, that's an issue. And I wish it wasn't.
And you don't get that many opportunities in life to go to college. You know? Like, once you get to a certain station in life, it is very, very difficult to go back to school, even part-time.
Yes. It's like the people in my class we have some people who are like 50, maybe even older than that. And there'd be like 3 or 4 of them. And the passion that they display is much greater than the passion of the people my age. I'm 20 years old, for reference. It's like most people my age couldn't give 2 shits about their degree. And it's like, it's a massive problem. I'm just like, don't go to uni then. Don't fucking go. Because it's like, okay, if you go to university, hate your degree, why? Why on earth? You're spending, 20, 30 grand on something you don't want to do? And it's like, the amount of people I know who've done the degree and then thought, okay, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to go work at a cafe for a few years, then do another degree. It's like, fuck's sake, God, just find something you actually like and fucking do it.
Yeah. I told my students when we did a lot of mentoring, and when I would have students come to me and say they didn't know if they wanted to finish their degree and they didn't know what they wanted to do, I'd say, what do you do in your free time? Do the thing. If you can find it, that's how I knew that I needed to be an educator.
Yes.
Because if I was going to do that much in my free time for free, and you can get paid for that, like, I can't really get paid. I'm not good enough to get paid to be a power lifter. But, if I can get paid to talk about sport nutrition and things like that and travel and be an educator, then I'm going to absolutely do that.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's like, I wish more people would actually do it. It's like people always have these excuses, and it's like, I mean, I'm not a big fan of the whole like Gary V hustle 24/7 mindset. I mean, I get the point, and it's like he has to be over the top to get where he's going, but it kind of pisses me off. But I do agree with the majority of what he says. It's just, I think it's the wrong way to go about it. But it's like, I wish more people would actually go somewhere more towards that end of the spectrum. Yeah. Like, fuck, just pick something you like and do it. It's like,
exactly.
It seems straightforward, but I guess the challenging bit is that you have to endure somehow getting your foot in the door for years and years and years. Like, how long do you think, how long did it take you to sort of get your foot in the door before you became anything in this sort of space?
Oh my God. I don't think I'm anything. I don't think I'm anything yet, but it's so funny because I was talking to Miguel the other day from Revive Stronger, and today too. We're working on a project together, but I said, we were talking about that it's hard for us to really kind of celebrate our successes because it's like our 2 modes are, yes, of course I did this successful thing. There's no need to celebrate because the only other option is failure. Like, if I don't do the thing, it's failure. And so for me, it's hard for me to even recognize my achievements, I guess, and where I am. I have a bad habit of sort of discounting them. You know, I actually even wrote a blog about this, saying don't wish me luck, because I don't like luck is where preparation meets opportunity. And so I have to remind myself a lot that the only reason that I am where I am is because I was prepared to take on those opportunities. You know, I had my PhD, and I was not a complete asshole online. And I could engage with people, and, you know, and then when I was on podcasts starting out, I thought, oh my, what if I, you know, people think that I know stuff. And it took me a while to realize, like, okay, I know a little bit about, like, you know, certain areas, and it's okay if I don't know things. Yeah. So I feel like I still am absolutely finding my footing and sort of, you know, realizing like where I am in this whole scope. And, you know, like traveling with Dr. Mike and whatnot has been really incredible. I kind of thought about that when I was in Tel Aviv, like, man, you know, there are probably a lot of people who would like give their left nut to be in this position right now. And like, here I am. It's really incredible. So you know, I think a lot of this is really, like I said, it's about being prepared for these opportunities. And I might be, you know, a poor judge of like how long it's taking or where I am, because I tend to be really, really critical of myself. And and I have always been like this, that I either got an A or I failed. Like a B was not okay for me. Not to say that I have gotten a few Bs. But it's just a part of my, I guess, my identity that, you know, I have to be this type of person, and I have to do, you know, the absolute best, and like people are expecting X, Y, and Z from me. Yes. But the plus side of that is that, you know, once I get to this seminar or I'm on the podcast or whatever, then I realize like, oh, I'm really prepared and everything's going to be okay. Yes. And that wasn't so bad. And so then afterwards I can kind of take a breath. Yeah.
Oh, I think it's very same with me as well. I think a lot of people in this sort of space that are succeeding, it's like to get anywhere in any sort of competitive field, it's like you need to sort of have that self-criticism. But I think it is dangerous though. Like recently I've been going to a psychologist, like a counselor, and possibly like kind of about this sort of thing, because it's like, okay, no matter what you achieve, it's always like, okay, but there's more. You could have done like better in this aspect though. And it's like, I find it, once you get into that sort of mindset, it's very hard to sort of realize, oh shit, I have actually achieved things. It's like, I personally find it very hard to sit back and be like, oh shit, most 20-year-olds haven't done these sort of things or whatever. Like, it's like, it's very interesting to see that it's quite a common sort of mindset among, I swear 99% of my podcast guests have these sort of feelings like, oh shit, I just want pure perfection. It's like, it is unrelenting, and it doesn't feel that draining, but it is unrelenting.
And I think you get we get into an echo chamber too, because it's like, how many of us have PhDs? It's like, oh, everyone's got a PhD now. Like, not really. Like, I think it's, you know, like 1% of the population or something, but it just seems like, oh, a PhD isn't cool anymore. Everyone's got one now. Like, what else can I get? How many letters can I put after my name? That's like how like my friend the other day, she was like, oh, I can't wait until you graduate. And I'm doing my undergraduate. And I was like, why? It's just an undergraduate. I didn't get it. And I was like, oh shit. Some people, that's actually like a massive thing. Like, they completed their undergraduate degree, and it's like, I get really good grades too, but I was still just like, oh, it's just an undergraduate. I always see it as a given, which is I think possibly really bad, because it's like, oh, but I guess it does drive success. But then it's like, okay, what is the aim in life? Is the metric you're trying to maximize pure success and notoriety, or is it like happiness, if that is the metric to maximize? So it's like, that is the conflicting thing, and I don't know where the fuck we can get those answers, but it's an important question to even touch on, because I think it's so common nowadays. It's like everyone sees everyone else's success and they think, oh shit, that everyone's got that now. That is standard. That is mediocre and average. But it's like, oh shit. In the grand scheme of things, if you compared yourself to every other person in the world, it's like you're doing pretty well. And it's like, that is the thing that I think so many of us miss. It's like, the fact that we are doing so well, but it's like we don't. But I don't know if it's good to dwell on that either, because I guess
then maybe you'll be like, oh shit, I'm amazing. No need to hustle anymore.
Oh, right. Yeah. You can't become complacent.
No.
I think it's just like there has to be a good blend of sort of like humility. You know, you can't take yourself too seriously, and, you know, you have to realize where you came from.
Yes.
And I did not have like all statistics were stacked against me in terms of getting a PhD at any point in my life or doing anything, you know, to this point. And so, you know, remembering that not everyone, though, you know, gets to the same point, even if you give a bunch of people the same opportunities. But, you know, a lot of us don't have the same opportunities. And that you have to kind of, I think, create your own metric for success. Is that, you know, like, what are your other values? That's why I like doing the vision board, because part of my values too are like, you know, fostering my relationships with my family and loved ones, and learning how to have better work-life balance. Because wow, you know, I think a lot of us who have this issue, like, we will literally work all day until we're no longer functional. And you know, that's not good for mental or physical health. The success for me is going to be, you know, when I find a balance between being able to, you know, take a breath and slow down a little bit and like enjoy myself without that sort of like academic guilt of I should be writing right now.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like like I think I was literally thinking just while you're saying that, it's like, you know, the book that I'm getting the tattoo of, Ego is the Enemy. If you paired the mindset, if everyone took the mindset from that book and you combined it with Ryan Holiday's other book, Obstacle is the Way. It's like, so that Obstacle is the Way basically says, hey, to move forward, you have to confront the obstacle. Ego is the enemy is basically like, stay humble in success, and then basically realize that your ego will kill success, but then it'll also stop it happening in the first place. So it's like, if you take the mindset from those two books, I think it would be fantastic. And it's like, that is something that I think is so hard to do. Like, actually work-life balance, and like, is that even useful? Because it's like, it depends what you want. And it's like, okay, how much are you willing to sacrifice mental health in order to get success? But maybe that's not even the question, though, because maybe the moment you start sacrificing mental health, success goes down. So it's like, that's something that I would like to know if there's any research on, but no clue. Yeah,
it's like almost a balance between like, are we talking about like productivity or are we talking about success? You know, like you need to have a certain level of productivity to hopefully have success, but not all productivity leads to success. You know, like you can produce a lot of things, you can produce a lot of content, but is it content that's going to be received, that's going to be, you know, adding to the field? And I think at some point, you know, are you reaching a point of diminishing returns where you're just trying to do, and you're not actually adding value?
Yes, that's the thing. How do you go about sort of figuring out how to manage your time or what things to cut out? Because, like, for instance, with me, one thing that I've been big on recently is social media. Like, I realized I was spending, I can't remember how much it was. It was like 5 hours a day on my phone, 5 to 6 hours a day on my phone. And then it was around 2 to 3 hours a day on Instagram. So it's like, that's a fucking load of time. Like, is there certain things like that where you realize, oh shit, I need to minimize that? And is there specific techniques you do to get rid of those?
I'm experimenting because I'm so used to having a sort of a blocked schedule. Like, I mean, every semester, you know, you're basically told this is going to be your course schedule. And so I would have, okay, certain blocks of time I'm going to be teaching, course prep, gym, and then, you know, fit in the rest where I could. And so I never really had like a lot of extraneous time. You know, I really didn't ever have command of my own schedule. So suddenly I had all of this time and I thought, oh, well, this is great. Like, I can do all of the things. But I didn't really know how long all of the things were going to take every day. And so I started off trying to literally do all of the things every day. You know, every day I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to do all of my client check-ins. I'm going to study for my RD course. I'm going to write some of this book. I'm going to post on social media. Like, just absolutely everything. And you don't really realize like how long things are going to take, you know, and even for studying, you know, I'm going to do a chapter a day. No, because if you really want to absorb the material, you probably are going to need to do less than an entire chapter a day. But I just thought, oh my gosh, with so many hours, I can do all the things that I didn't have time to do before. So some of it was just, it's sort of like when you're talking about like helping a person find energy balance, like don't modify anything necessarily, just track what you're eating now and see how much that is. And so I had to take a step back and say, okay, actually, how long do these things actually take me day to day?
Yes.
And, prioritize, like, okay, like, of course, client check-ins every day. And of course, going to the gym, I go 5 days a week. So, there are certain things that I prioritize, and like quality time with my boyfriend, because that's a relationship. I'm going to foster that. I'm going to invest time and energy. And so, ensuring that I had sufficient time each day to focus on like a few big things, and then adding in, and I make like goals each month as well and kind of break those down, and then fitting in the goals, chunking them into smaller pieces and saying, okay, for a while I did try to do kind of like all little things every day, and that might work for an hour and then another thing for an hour, but I don't do really well with big task switching like that. I would rather have 5 hours to work on a PowerPoint or to research and write. And so I found that that's really what seems to work best for me is I've switched to, this is the day that I do all of my research. So if I, for my book, for my presentations and everything, I read and I take notes, and I can just do that all day. And I don't feel like, oh, I can only do this for so long, and and like that will prevent my flow.
Right. Yes.
So so that's really what works best for me, is that I have alternating days now where I focus on just one thing at a time, and then I have my constants that I do every day.
Yes. And then what about when it comes to distractions during those times? Because I find, again, the social media thing is like that will become a massive distraction for me, or whether I can just click on Google and go Facebook or whatever, YouTube. Like, and it's like you just click on those things, or you want to. Like, for instance, when you have a podcast, you always check on the views. So it's like you're always like, oh, quick, go to Podbean, check how many views I got. And that sort of stuff is addictive. And I find those sort of things, especially with deep work, and I think with studying as a university student, especially if you combine that with the fact that most people don't like their degrees, is most people can't sit down and study for like, do that 5-hour thing. It's like, how do you go about getting into that sort of flow state? Because it's like, I don't know if you've read Cal Newport's book, Deep Work, but it's like that exact thing is what exactly he recommends. And it's like, I think that's exactly how like world-changing work is produced.
Oh, yeah. I think part of it is, and sometimes I do get distracted. Like sometimes I'll be reading something and I'll just think, oh my gosh, I'm so inspired. I have to like write about this right now. So I'm not the best at limiting that when I'm feeling inspired to write something. Like usually I'll post something on Instagram, but I do try to chunk my social media times. Like I'll be really active some days and like post a bunch of content all at once. And then the next day I'm like, I'm going to take a break today and not really do that much because I want to do, like you said, the deep work.
Yes.
But I think having, giving yourself that time to sort of like having a sleep regimen, getting into a work regimen where you are, I like to have like a cup of tea and I have an actual office. I have my treadmill desk. And so when it's something that I like really, really need to focus on, I have to have just like a quiet place that's, either this or I have a den also, which like there's nothing in it, and like literally have my phone in a different room. That's really the best way for me to do it, or like far away so that it's really inconvenient for me to have to get up and go look at it.
Right.
So that's, I think, the best thing is just to physically put your both your mind and your body in that place of, I'm going to do this thing now. And I have the benefit also of just being really interested in what I'm doing.
Yes.
When I'm putting together the seminars and writing and whatnot, I really have a vested interest in this. And so it's not hard for me to focus for a long period of time.
Yes.
And I found that that's been the same. I mean, even for like when I was in school and whatnot, studying, I mean, I would study I really loved what I was doing, and having study groups and things. I love talking about it.
So it's the kind of thing where it just sort of flowed. And I think it's good that you take those steps to sort of like get rid of the phone, et cetera, et cetera. Because I think, and even just saying that out loud for people to hear, because I think a lot of students don't realize those sort of fundamental things. They don't realize that if they check Instagram every 5 minutes, they're fucking up their flow. It's like that's not how you're going to get A's. You're not going to get A's by checking it every 5 minutes.
Exactly.
Like, for instance, I use this app called Forest, where it's like on your laptop, it doesn't let you go to certain websites. On your phone, it doesn't let you go off that app unless you want to kill the tree. You kind of have to buy into it, and it's pretty easy to bypass. But you get like a forest, and every time you leave the app, you kill the tree that you're planting or whatever. So it's a bit like you kind of have to really buy into it. But it seems to work relatively well if you can make yourself give a shit about the forest. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. Yeah. What about when it comes to like all of the things, just regarding like resources that you think that actually can make you a more productive person? Because I think for me, there's been certain books, for instance, the tattoo book, and like other books like that, where it's like they've seriously, absolutely changed the way that I can get into that deep work and actually make something impactful. How do you go about getting that sort of those sort of resources? And is there any books you recommend, any podcasts, et cetera, et cetera?
Oh man, well, the only the podcast that I listen to most of the time, like especially on long drives and whatnot that I've had in the past few months, I really look up seminar speakers, and really it's just been in microbiome stuff right now.
Yeah.
But that was so my YouTube recommendations are limited. I would say in terms of, I'm trying to look at, I have a book, I don't know where it is. Oh, it might be in with my other old school books. But having, done the fellowship in pedagogy, I really learned about kind of the science of teaching and learning. And it was really something that I tried to ingrain in my students as well, were sort of the methods of how to really digest reading material.
Yes.
And I don't always do this, to the same extent. Like I don't always try and break everything down, because I've always been an avid reader. I've been able to read since I was like 2. Looking at something that is really new to you and it's really technical. One of the things that we used to recommend was try to give yourself like a solid 20 to 30 minutes. If that's, if you feel like you can't do, a full hour, if that's too much, at least 20 to 30 minutes is really a good place to start. Even 20 minutes, because in most cases people probably can't go more than 5, like you said. So like a 20-minute time, give yourself a timer. And like when you're reading, a lot of times textbooks have headings and things like that.
Yes.
So the first thing is, you just read the headings. So you just know and list out like what you're actually going to be reading about. Yeah. Then as you're reading, you literally at the end of every paragraph, stop and ask yourself, what did I just read? Summarize it in your head. If you don't know what you just read without looking at it, and so I've always stressed to my students that there's a difference between understanding something and knowing or remembering it. You can read something, it makes sense to you, you understand it, you move on, you never look at it again, and then when the test comes, you're like, oh my gosh, I knew this. Why? Like I don't know. I thought that I knew this. It made sense when I read it. Well, that's because you understood it, but you didn't actually commit it to memory. And so you have to quiz yourself. And so like things like, writing the headings as a question in your notes and then writing the answer to that question based on what you just read. Now you have built yourself a study guide, basically. So things like that, actually working with the information, whatever it is, contextualizing it, trying to like apply it to something else that not just scanning the page. Because if you're just scanning the page and you're not, taking notes of some form, you will probably, at some point down the line, you're going to be like, I just looked at that page and I have no idea what it said. You turn to the page and you realize the previous page like is not in your memory at all. And that's a sign that you're really just going through the motions. Yeah,
that's the thing that I think it's so common. It's like I have a friend they'll basically, in class, they'll copy down every single thing the teacher's saying, and then straight after class, they'll go to the lecture slides and just copy down the lecture slides. And it's like, there's no testing going on there. I think it's completely ineffective. It's like, in class, what I try and do is I try and note down the main things, but mainly I'm using Quizlet. So it's like I'll use Quizlet to make efficient quiz cards while we're actually having the lecture. So then it's like after the lecture, I've basically, the Quizlet is my notes, and then I'll turn the Quizlet into a quiz, and then from there I'll just quiz myself on it, and then if I don't remember it, go back and learn, quiz it again, and it seems to work pretty well. Like, oh my god, I can learn an insane amount pretty quick. Like, I'm in 1 year, I knew literally nothing about a paper, and then I would just do every day for like every hour that I was traveling, I could go on my phone and go Quizlet. It's like I felt like my head was a full teapot, but like it was, I couldn't fit any more in. If I tried to fill in some stuff would spill out, but it was relatively efficient, I think. And one thing,
and I think
oh no, go on.
I was going to say, I think the other most effective way to learn something is to teach it.
Yes, 100%.
And so that's why, tutoring helped me so much. And I feel that, when I'm reading something, I'm going to create some sort of content from it. And so as I'm reading it, I'm thinking of how can I create content from this, like put it into context to make it useful, so that type of processing and then communicating it to other people, you now have to you have to make sure that it makes sense in your own mind before you can communicate it to someone else.
Yeah. And I think that's helped me so much when it comes to bodybuilding, because it's like, I don't coach yet or anything like that, but it's like when I get to the point where I am coaching, it's like I've already done it with a few people where they'll come to me and they'll say, oh, James, can I have your help? And then I'll help them out a little bit. And it's like, I'll understand where they get caught. And it's like where I get caught as well. It's like, they'll ask me a question. I'll be like, I have no fucking clue. And it's just like the questions that they choose to ask sometimes perplexes me. And it's like, that's the thing that I need to know. But one thing that I'd like to, we'll probably finish off with this, but I think we've had this is not how I expected the podcast to go, but I'm very happy how it went. I would like to touch on the danger of health hype trains. So what do you think is the main issue with sort of having a hype train or a fad around health, for instance, keto, for instance, literally anything, BCAAs, all that sort of stuff?
Oh my gosh. There are so many issues. I think one of the most significant would be there's two main issues. One would be that it erodes trust between lay people and actual legitimate professionals in the field. So the lay people don't know who they're supposed to listen to, and often they listen to the loudest voices, which aren't necessarily the most correct.
Yes.
I think the other glaring issue is that it has really begun to promote this sort of anti-intellectualism in which everyone's entitled to their opinion, and that is correct. Everyone is entitled to their opinion, but people are failing to evaluate those opinions. Yes. And so now all opinions are considered not just equally valid, but also equally accurate. Right. And they are not.
That is simply just not true.
Exactly. So, those are the two biggest issues probably for, the fitness professionals, because now we're up against people who don't have any credentials or any education, and they're just louder than we are, and they're not wearing a shirt, and they're on YouTube, and so everyone listens to them. In terms of the people, and they matter, even more than we do, our clients, the people that we want to help, they're just confused, and I think they feel really powerless, because they're told that it's something outside of their control, like it's their hormones or their genetics or things like that they, or their gut health. They can't control these things, and now they think they have to spend exorbitant amounts of money, or that it's just runs in the family and there's nothing they can do about it, and they're predisposed to it, and it completely reduces their motivation and their self-efficacy. They think that there's nothing they can do, and they try, these fad diets and see perhaps temporary success, but then it leads to failure, and that further demotivates them. And so we just end up in this really damaging cycle where they're struggling and feeling frustrated, and people are cashing in on that, which really pisses me off. I can't tell you how many people I've had come to me that have these bogus tests, the IgG food sensitivity test, or the Dutch hormone test, or who knows what else. I mean, the organic acids. There are so many that are being promoted by, functional medicine and naturopaths and things like that. I've heard of people, of RDs, recommending that people get these tests. They're not validated, and they're like $400. And then I have to say, gosh, I'm really sorry, but that test actually is not validated. It doesn't test the things they said that it tests for. But good news is you can eat the foods that came up on your IgG food sensitivity test. So, there you go. And then it's great when I can actually help them lose weight and they realize that, there's no hocus pocus to it, and there's no like man behind the curtain. It's really just a matter of energy balance.
Yeah.
So, that's at least, something that good can come from it. But oh my gosh, just the number of people that promote stupid crap, celery juice and everything like that.
Like literally so much shit. And it's like, it's so prevalent. And it's like the shit that annoys me the most is like the fact that it's literally as simple as energy balance. And then it's like people say, oh, but I followed MyFitnessPal, and like, I'm like, okay, yeah, but like realize that you're probably tracking wrong, and like you're not that accurate. You probably missed some stuff, and like your energy output changes. So it's like, fuck, like shit changes. It is obviously energy balance, and it's like there's barely any exceptions to that. If there is, would you say there is any?
I think that what people get confused about, and it's always energy balance. Now, of course, it may for some people be more difficult to gain a negative energy experience a negative energy balance, and have a caloric deficit. Like if you have hypothyroidism, you already will have a suppressed metabolic rate. Your energy levels are going to be really, really low, and so. Yeah, it's not really, maybe it's going to be really, really hard for you because you have to eat like 1,000 calories a day to be in a deficit. Okay, then it's still energy deficit, but it's going to be really hard for that person.
Yeah.
And I think that what people get confused about is talking about energy deficit, versus appetite when it comes to things like hormones and whatnot. A hormone, show me the hormone that prevents fat loss in an energy deficit. there is not, I had one person on Instagram be like, never race. Like, yeah, it just, sure, make one up. They don't, the current stance in the literature, this does not occur. Nothing supersedes the laws of thermodynamics. But do we have hormones that increase our appetite? Yes, absolutely. So we can, the hormones can influence our appetite, can influence our willingness to, move kind of sporadically and things like that, how much we're going to fidget. So hormones play a role in, appetite regulation and movement, but that is a separate thing from creating an energy deficit.
Yes.
And so even if you are at a hormonal disadvantage because, you have hypothyroidism and then, you go on medication and hopefully that's corrected, that's fine. Or, and there have been studies that have illustrated that like the glycemic index of the diet doesn't matter for fat loss, that circulating insulin levels, they don't matter for fat loss, that it doesn't matter. Like your hormonal milieu may just make you a little bit more hungry or move around less, but you still will have to move a little bit more and eat a little bit less and create an energy deficit. Even in, I've talked about with gut health before, you may have a microbiome that is excellent, and this has been shown in rodents and in humans, that in some individuals, there's less energy in the feces. So basically, you are more efficient at extracting energy from the diet. And they've actually done transplants, both from obese mice to shown that yes, the microbiome does play a role in fat gain. But that doesn't mean that you can't lose fat. It just means that if you do have a really efficient microbiome, you'll probably just have to eat a little bit less than the person next to you who has a less efficient microbiome. Does not mean that you can't lose fat. And even those changes, it accounted for about a 10% increase in total body fat. So it was like, okay, this person, has 30 pounds of fat. This other person has 33 pounds of fat. It's like,
That's negligible. It's like,
right.
is there any situations where something like hormones or something like that could play a role in the percentage? Say if you're going through a gaining phase, obviously genetics is a massive part. But say, for instance, if you're, and I'm punching in the dark here, but say, for instance, if your hormones are out of whack or whatever, could that, for instance, influence the percentage of fat gain to muscle gain? And then could that, say if you ate...
You may, yeah. So...
Say if you ate like sugar instead of complex carbohydrates, could that possibly have an influence on percentage gain, or?
What has a greater influence really is how lean you are when you start. So if you start a mass phase with more body fat, then your lean mass to muscle mass gain will not be optimal. But even optimal is still that you're going to be gaining more fat mass than you are lean mass.
Yes.
In every situation. So I don't think that it would even really be like a clinically relevant difference, and people do have to sometimes eat refined carbohydrates just to be able to get down enough food, because the food volume can be so high if you're only eating complex carbs. And likewise, if you are in, a cutting phase and you're training really hard and, you have elevated cortisol levels chronically, it's not going to prevent you from losing fat mass, but you may lose a little bit more lean mass. But that's, you're still losing weight. It's just that it's not, optimal for body composition. And so in that case, that's part of the reason why we have, training periodization and things like that to help kind of control cortisol levels. And we see that, people do tend to hold a little bit more water and things like that as the training volume really increases, and then during deload it comes off. But, I really don't think that you could cause like an appreciable difference in, the amount of fat mass to muscle mass, because a lot of it too is also just like rate of fat gain, like you don't need to gain, rate of mass gain. You don't need to gain super, super fast. If you're trying to gain like, 2% body weight per week or something like that, about 1% of that or about half of that rather is going to be fat mass that you don't need, so taking it really slow, those are going to play a much greater role than hormones would. I mean, I think we're seeing more and more, like Jordan Tromlin just put out a really interesting article that, insulin, unless you're looking at like super physiological levels of insulin, it's not playing a huge role in muscle protein synthesis. And we see that with growth hormone, with testosterone, that, the hormones don't, at least not directly, they don't play a significant role in hypertrophy, and certainly not in fat loss.
I think that's something that's so important, because it's like people like to focus on the minutia when it's like, okay, but really you're training like a retard and eating like shit. You can't get a caloric deficit or surplus, whatever you're aiming for. So it's like, okay, why the fuck would you focus on gut health when you train like an idiot? So it's like, come on. It's like, please, God, the basics are not basic, so get the basics down, please. Like, that's the thing. But I have to zip off to my tattoo appointment, so I think we'll end it here. But where can people find you online? Everything to do with Gabrielle Fundaro.
Well, like you mentioned at the beginning, on Instagram, Vitamin PhD. Also on Facebook, it's Vitamin PhD. You can find all my previous podcasts and links to buy tickets for upcoming seminars at vitaminphdnutrition.com. I also have a blog there that I haven't updated in forever, but if you want to read any of the stuff that I wrote about like resigning and things like that, all those articles are up there as well. And links to RP Plus, so that's RP's subscription site to some really awesome content from the RP coaches if you want to get, continue your education and things like that. Same thing for Stronger Experts. So those are some really amazing platforms for people if they want to, see actual lectures from a bunch of people who, really know what they're talking about. And then also me.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And so, just, check out those links and, if people are in New York, I'm going to be up there in April and UK in May. So see hopefully people around the world in the next year.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the Student Side Hustle. I would appreciate so much if you would leave a review if you'd like to hear more of what I'm saying. Then I would love if you would follow me on Instagram or check out my other social media, all linked in the show notes. And again, I would just like to say thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful evening and study hard.